Hi babes, Bill here. Okay. It's been a busy weekend. You know, with Remembrance Day, Remembrance ceremonies, all the usual admin to get taken care of and squared away. But I did manage to get on the computer for a little while, and I've had some great feedback from a few posters who self-identify as feminists. Now, this is great stuff. It shows that there are some feminists out there willing to discuss the issues, and it's also given us a great shop window to try and debunk the idea that we're all angry women haters, you know? So it's all good on that front. Just once again, I've got to encourage you, get on the channels of the people that we're debating with here on this channel. Check out any of their videos that you find interesting and leave a comment or two. It's good for them, and it also gets your opinions out there. Make your point, but remember that your comment is going to represent all of us. So be polite, be respectful, attack arguments, not people. And if, despite your best intentions, it kicks off a shitstorm, and it does happen, walk away. Get out of the conversation. Just leave it at that. Be the bigger man. If you're not going to achieve anything, there's really not any point being there. Now, you can take that into a broader context. I don't know if you've noticed, but the winter's here. I'm pretty sure your local charities are running out of manpower round about now. Yeah, I know they are round about here. You know, when it's dank and when it's miserable, a lot of people start to think, fuck it, I've done enough this year. But this time of year is where people's efforts matter the most. Now, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, pick up the phone, get in touch with whoever's dealing with whatever interests you in the local area. You know, for instance, homelessness is a big issue for me, a big concern to me round about now. You don't need money, but broad shoulders and a willing smile go a long way to help out. So, see if they need volunteers. A few hours of your time can make a big difference, especially coming up to the solstice. So check for flyers in cafe windows, you know, the supermarket cardboards, notice boards, the local church parish notices, anything. There's going to be something, and they're going to need you. I don't want to press gang into this, but you know, do it because it's right. It's the right thing to do. Do it because you genuinely want to help out. But if you do decide to do something and you get into the volunteering thing, don't hide the fact that you're an advocate for men's rights. Engage with people, engage with your fellow volunteers. They've probably got a very similar mindset to you. And if they want to, you can debate a few points. Now, don't get into a fight about it, there's a limit to this. But give people a positive impression about what it is you're interested in. By the time spring comes round, they're going to start associating MRA with you, with a real, live, honest person. You know, it's all about hearts and minds. If you can convince people that we're not monsters, that we've got a valid cause, and you can debunk some of the lies and the myths that are surrounding the men's rights movement, you're going to achieve a lot. Back to our feminist friends. There's a lot of positives here, but there's some disappointing negatives as well. You know, it's clear that we're very close on intent. You know, both sides, I suppose, both want equality and they want to look after the victims that society's creating. However, it's pretty obvious that we completely disagree over what constitutes equality, who the victims are, and who's to blame for it. If anybody was reading Jane's comments, it's pretty clear that she's got a thing about glass ceilings. She wants to remove glass ceilings so that women can reach the apex of society. Now, she either missed or doesn't care about comments that were made about the glass basement, which would mean that there are working men beneath her, and, well, whatever. She also missed one of my comments about blue-collar women. Have always worked. And it wasn't about rights, it wasn't about choice, they had to work. The point being that the employment prospects of a tiny number of middle-class women just don't interest me. It's not a priority. Probably you guys feel that way as well. However, for people like Jane, that represents an unbearable tyranny on the entirety of humankind. Now, I don't know about you, I really struggle to give a flying fuck about who the top 500 CEOs in America are. They can be women, they can be men, they can be butt ugly Martians for all I care. But it's a huge concern for a lot of feminists. So much so that I think her reaction to racial oppression was quite telling. She said in one of the comments something to the effect that even black men could have better jobs than women, historically. And that completely threw me. I was like, having a decent job matters more than being treated in every aspect of your life as hardly better than a beast. Yeah, I don't get that. And I didn't get the laugh out loud, that's not what I meant comment that followed it. But I think I've had a wee bit of time to think about it, and I think that comes back to my other video about Sharon Osbourne and her pals. You know, there's situations where men just don't seem to register as being entirely human in some feminist thinking processes. Other Seed made some good points, but again, he had great difficulty seeing men as victims. You know, the language he was using was things like many more women are killed or seriously injured, men are more likely to, that sort of thing. And he's got a point. You know, a 60-40 split in female to male seriously injured or killed is many more. But you look at it from a different point of view and it's almost half. And the reverse statistic's true of frequency, but that doesn't seem to bother him. You know, 40% of women versus 60% of men suffer frequent domestic attacks. Yeah, so there was an account of a male actor in Britain who suffered repeated physical domestic assaults, and again that didn't seem to trouble him too much at all. Now, some of this is probably the 500 character limit. You know, it's very hard to get a precise handle on what somebody's actually trying to say when they've only got 500 characters to play with. But clearly the plight of women does matter a lot more to them than the plight of men. Responsibility is another bugbear. Now this is in general, this is not people who've been posting on these threads or whatever, but the feminist response always seems to fall into variations of not our problem. Now I'm sure there's lots and lots of different things, but it sounds to me like they're trying to refuse ownership of any negative products of feminism. So men are responsible for the initial condition that led us here. You know, divorce laws and that sort of thing. They're old, they're created, modified and updated by men. Quite ironic when generally a male feminist says that. Males created all the old laws. You know, so why are feminists so against changing the ones that penalise men, but they're so in favour of new ones that favour women? Yeah, that's not about equality, it's about pro-female activity. You know, which is fine, but don't tell the world that you're for equal treatment when you're campaigning for exactly the opposite. One that Other Seed had was the no true Scotsman argument. You know, the no true feminist believes that. Well, perhaps no moderate feminist believes one thing, but when a feminist agenda is driving a debate, and when that agenda achieves its goal, why aren't the moderates fighting against it? Why aren't they speaking out when some crazy shit that Harriet Harman comes up with hits the streets? You know, she's simultaneously demanding all female candidate lists for new Labour MPs, but insisting that at least half of the top Labour leadership posts should always be held by a woman. You know, where's the feminist backlash against that? That's blatantly a sexist double standard. Erin Pisley's another one. She was, we'd call her an MRA. She was a self-identified feminist. She set up some men's shelters in the 70s when she was setting up Britain's first women's shelters, and she got death threats, basically. She had to leave the country in fear for her life because she tried to help men. There was no feminist outcry. There were no massive... You can imagine what would have happened if it was MRAs that had managed to chuck her out of the country. Oh, that's clumsy, but whatever. That wasn't us. Yeah. Legislation that blatantly penalises men, enacted by politicians who self-identify as feminist, is disowned pretty much the minute the ink's dry and the public backlash begins. But there's never any visible attempt to repeal the legislation the way there would be if there was some kind of legislation that hurt women. In Britain, everybody knows about the CSA. Just, if you're not in Britain and you haven't heard of it, get onto Wikipedia or something and just read the whole sorry saga. Another one we hear is that's something for the men's rights movement to deal with. You know, generally from the same people who are telling you that A Voice for Men's a hate site. Yeah, all right, there's a lot of issues that the men's rights movement are working on, but it's very difficult to do that when the public perception of us is almost entirely negative and it's under constant attack from feminists. It's kind of difficult to make any kind of headway, you know. Now these are observations, they're not criticisms. There's common ground. I'm not denying there's common ground. But clearly we've got to get a handle on what the other side, for want of a less argumentative term, what the other side is after, what they're trying to achieve. And we also need to think hard about what our priorities are going to be. Now I'm going to stick a few links in the low bar after each video. Suggestions are welcome. If there's a group you think could do with a shout out, then let me know. Same thing on interesting channels or any interesting videos you've seen. Give me a shout, I'll stick it in the low bar. And as long as this channel continues to be quite popular, you know, it'll publicise a few things. Another thing that others said that struck home was that we're just YouTube activists. Yeah, fair call, you know. In my case, that's quite literally true. There isn't a South Lanarkshire men's group. Well, yet. But don't let that put you off. Boys and girls, change has to come by consent. There's no amount of activism is going to achieve a thing without public support. But this is the new millennium. People communicate differently these days. Social media, things like Twitter, things like Facebook, and especially YouTube, are how people talk to each other these days. You know, people talk, they exchange ideas, and they form opinions with things like this. So present your case. If your case has got merit, and it has, you're going to win people over. When people accept our case has merit, then we're going to affect change. It's going to happen, people. Laters.